Come on in, everyone. Come on in because we are finally here, y'all. We are finally here for Decision Day of Married at First Sight, season 19. And I've really enjoyed the season, y'all. I must say, although it was tough as a YouTube content creator doing reviews every single week, it was tough keeping up with the episodes, how fast they dropped. I can still honestly say I'm happy that this didn't take 8, 9 months. I guess I'm just gonna have to get tougher. I don't know what to tell y'all. If this is the way it's gonna be, this is the way it's gonna be. I'm gonna be here because Married at First Sight is still one of my favorite shows to review. I love spending time with y'all. So I'm just gonna have to get used to it, kind of like these marriages, right? So hey, shocking answers for me on decision day. A whole lot of arm twisting, a whole lot of Hail Marys being thrown. I mean, some of these ladies was throwing Hail Marys to the end zone, hoping that these men would catch these balls. And I'm talking about Brittany threw a Hail Mary, Rhonda threw a Hail Mary, Chad threw a Hail Mary. Literally, they was hoping these people would catch these balls. They did. They did. But in all transparency, y'all, I wasn't able to stay away from all of the spoilers. So I actually do know the outcome of the reunion, but I haven't seen it. So I try to like keep my reviews completely non-biased about the next episode, but I already know some of the outcomes. But what I'm gonna do is I watched this episode before I knew the outcomes. So my notes that I have are actually true to not knowing the outcome. So I'm going to stick to my notes because that was really what I was thinking when I was watching the episode. But I'm going to go in the same order they went in. And the first couple they brought up for us to hear whether or not it was going to be a yes or a no was Josh and Jalen. And Josh says, he wants to say yes. He's talking about how incredible the marriage has been. And I'll tell you this, what I've learned about Josh. Josh does tell a lot of small lies, whether you call them little white lies, big lies, whatever the case may be. So I do want to address two things with Josh and Jalen. If y'all have been watching my reviews, I've told you over and over again that Jalen and her mother are spooky, scary, and they have a lot of trauma. Belinda has trauma from her marriage. Okay, she actually experienced it. But Jalen has trauma from hearing the mother's stories and watching her. And she's actually brought her mother's own, I think, experiences to her life now. This whole mother-daughter thing, I think it was a mistake, but we'll talk about that more later on because the intertwining of Jalen and Jalen and her mom are going to need to be separated if Jalen is going to want to have a future. So I'll say this about Josh. I remember when Josh started telling us about his life, he started telling us he was an introvert and he has a hard time making friends. So I think, Josh, when you have a hard time making friends, you work extra hard to keep the friends you have. And sometimes that may mean you don't want to disrupt the friendship. When you know a person doesn't really want to accept what you are and what you want, what you do is you lie to them to keep them in your life. That's what I believe. I think the first lie that Josh actually told was that post-nup. I remember when Josh told Jalen, hey, my business partner says I'm going to need a post-nup. And then later on, Josh said, well, now that I trust you, I don't need a post-nup. And I was like, well, wait a minute, Josh. I think Josh lied then. I don't think it ever was the business partner who was requiring. I think Josh wanted it because at the time he didn't know who Jalen was, if he could trust her. But because he didn't want to say that, because he didn't want to say, hey, I don't know who you are. You may be here for my money, blah, blah, this. I think I'm going to want a post-nup. Instead of him being the one to tell her the truth, he put it on his friend, right? And then once he felt comfortable, he took it off his friend. But I don't think it ever was on his friend. Now, I'm going to couple that with Josh always trying to pretend like everything is okay. I'm okay with whatever you do, Jalen. Whatever you do, Jalen, is wonderful. I'm with it. And I'm going to couple that with when Jalen does discover that maybe something Josh didn't say was the truth. She's extremely triggered and she's calling them red flags. But here's where these two really miss each other, because what Jalen also is missing is that there's very little truth that she can actually take. She can't take the truth. Jalen can't take the idea that someone might want something different for her. Because even in this soul sort of, are they going to say yes? Jalen keeps saying we're two different people. And basically, she was saying that if you can't do and like what I like, then I don't want you stuck in this marriage. Well, Jalen, that's telling me you're not even willing to meet in the middle anywhere. That's telling me what you're saying is I don't have the capacity to meet you in the middle. So if you don't like who I am now, then I don't want you to settle for me, because what I'm telling you is I'm not going to change. I'm not going to move from where I am. So Josh, you better not be lying to me and acting as if I'm all okay, because this is who I'm going to stay. So they both have a problem. The problem is Josh is what Jalen is saying. He's just saying everything is great, but in the end, I know he wants something more. And Jalen is saying that you better speak up because I'm not willing to change. Both of the position, there is a problem. There is a problem. Um, I think Jalen, as I've said all along, is she doesn't want to move from her comfort zone. She doesn't. She literally wants what Rhonda says out loud. What Rhonda says out loud is, I want someone to accept me just as I am. That's who Jalen wants, really who she wants. And I think it's because she saw her mother, and her mother has described a life of where she gave up everything. That's what her mother's description. We're going to get to the reality of her mother, but her mother described her life as she gave up everything, and she did it all for marriage, for the kids. And so what Jalen is saying, like she told her mother way before, I don't want to be anything like you, mom. I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to be independent. I want to make my own money. The other thing that Jalen is telling her mother, which she's also brought into this marriage with Josh, is I'm not going to overly bend towards a man like you did, mom, and I'm not going to lose myself. So in a lot of ways, what Jalen is trying to be, she's trying to be her anti-mother in her career, in her job. And she's also trying to be that way in the way in which she understands how two people actually have to merge their lives. I really got tired of everyone in this episode or this season talking about how they're two different people. Well, we all are two different people. What do people think? That we're all married people are all out here marrying their twin? No, we're not. You are two different people. God made you uniquely different. So people need to stop saying we're two different people. Duh, of course you are. The part of marriage is taking two different people and finding ways to bring those two people together to either merge the likenesses you have or develop them together. But what Jalen is concentrating on is her differences, and she's going to stay just where she is. She talks about how their lifestyles are different. And Josh talks a lot about community. I mean, we've heard this over and over again. Community, community, community. But what Josh is really talking about is I have a hard time making friends. So when I find them, i.e. a community, it's hard for me to let them go. And Jalen is not getting this part. And what Jalen keeps talking about is I need him to prioritize me. Jalen, you've got to understand what he's talking about when he talks about community. What Jalen is talking about is I want you to be willing to give up parts of your life, a lot of your life for me, because I believe that's what happened in Belinda's marriage. Belinda thinks that's what happened in her marriage. That Belinda gave up so much a part of herself to be with that baseball player. Okay. And now Jalen is saying, I want a man who's not going to make me just be in his life, but he also wants to be in my life. But I think what has happened to Jalen is that she's swung too far to the other side. Jalen is going to need to recalibrate, right? Even when Jalen says, the reason why I don't want you to say yes, Josh, if I'm not really who you want, because I'm not moving, is because I don't want you to resent me. Well, where is that coming from, Jalen? Why would you think he would resent you? You know why? Because I think Jalen saw that in her marriage with her mother. Hey, maybe Jalen even saw it in a past relationship she has. Jalen is actually speaking to an area in which she's either experienced it or with her mother, whereas when she stays stuck where she is and she doesn't want to bend, and the other person has to do all the bending to accommodate her, they become resentful. Jalen is describing a past behavior she's experienced or she's seen, and she's not saying how she will be different. She's just telling her partner in this moment, Josh, listen, I'm going to stay where I am. So I don't want you to say yes to me. I'm not changing. And then I don't want you to resent me. Well, that's not the answer, Jalen. That is not the answer. Is Josh's trying to keep everything intact the answer? No, because what Josh is doing, because he doesn't make community easily, because he doesn't bond with people easily, he is willing to say yes in the beginning to things, right? And he is willing to not break up with those things. I think Josh doesn't like that, right? That's why he's so holding on so tight to the Burning Man thing. It's more than Burning Man. It's I've built this community. I've made friends with these people. I've become comfortable with them. I don't want to have to go and figure out how to be comfortable with someone else because that's uncomfortable for me. He's got to learn to do that. And I think the same thing with Jalen. I think that they love each other. Josh, I think in the core, I do think he's a problem solver. I do. I think he'd be willing to figure out how we can make this work. But in this moment, I see Jalen being way too much of her mother. I see Jalen carrying way too much of her mother's wounds with her. And this is what happens when mothers make their daughters too much of their girlfriends. You see, even this whole idea of Belinda and Jalen getting married together on Married at First Sight, I didn't really like the premise because I felt like, mama, let your daughter have her own way. There's a part of me with Belinda where I feel like she lives vicariously through Jalen. Like she wants Jalen to not do all the mistakes she made, but what she's telling Jalen to do is the opposite of what she's doing. Remember that whole discussion with Belinda around be sure you don't sign that post-nup and give everything away because you could be left with kids. That was Belinda projecting. Now we're here in this marriage. You're getting married on the same day as your daughter. There's another part about Belinda. Remember how Chad and they both got these additional rings? I know in the season they showed Jalen getting her ring first. No, they showed Belinda getting a ring first, an upgraded ring, then Jalen. I wonder if it happened where Jalen got her ring first. And then Belinda saw it and mentioned it to Chad, and Chad went out and got the ring. I don't know. But Belinda with the cut off jeans, wanting to be married on the same day as her daughter, basically almost trying to, I don't know. I remember they were having that game and they were talking about your sex partners. And Belinda's like, oh, I was unfazed by hearing that about my daughter. Really? I mean, that just speaks to me more of a friend relationship. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be your friend, but as a mother, hearing your daughters, I don't know, some of you can speak to it. I just get this feeling with Belinda. She spends a lot of time trying to be Jalen's friend. But as a result, what Belinda does is she imposes her own fears onto Jalen, and Jalen's carrying that in her relationship. Now, I was shocked that Belinda said yes on decision day because I don't even think Belinda really likes Chad. And let me tell you why. And I don't want this to come off so harsh. I don't think Belinda likes Chad because what I'm trying to think of is who Belinda was when she was younger. How did Belinda get here? And what I know about Belinda is Belinda was a cheerleader. Remember, she showed us that cheerleading outfit. Belinda was slim, she was thin, she was a pretty girl in school, she was the cheerleader, possibly a head cheerleader, and she married the star baseball player. Think of that story. Now here we have Belinda grown up. Sure, she's gained a little weight. She's still a good looking woman. And I know Belinda wants someone to dote on her, and she's with Chad. Chad, the overweight guy. I don't think Chad was ever the handsome guy in school. Would Chad physically be a person that Belinda would like in real life? I don't think so. I don't think Belinda would go for the overweight guy who's pale with a big old belly. I don't think so. I think Belinda is the cheerleader. I think that's who she is in her heart. I think she likes to stay forever young, no problem. I don't think Chad is the guy. And when Belinda said that she had a conversation with Lovey the dog on whether or not they should say yes on decision day, I said, when you got to ask the dog whether or not you want to keep your husband, that's going to be a no. I was expecting Belinda to say a no when she said that she was consulting Lovey. Well, what do you think Lovey's going to say? Lovey going to say no, because what Lovey's been saying is, this man wants me off the bed. I got my legs kicked up. And no, we should say no to him because I'm not leaving this bed. You see, Belinda's married to that damn dog. That's who she's married to, and that's why that dog don't have no home training, because Belinda's so busy trying to be Jalen's friend and that dog's friend. She doesn't know how to be the mother and also the master of the dog. That dog is trying to run that house. But Belinda keeps talking about how she don't want to lose her voice. You see, I think the only reason Belinda said yes, because I'm going to go back to it again, is because she knew her daughter was going to say yes. I'm going to say it. Belinda, I believe, wants to be the same as her daughter. And I think Belinda is in a lot of ways trying to go back to her younger years and relive her life. And I think she said yes to Chad because she knew her daughter was going to say yes. And I think she wanted to be like her girlfriend, her daughter, and both say yes and be married. Belinda's talking about she doesn't want to lose her voice. Well, listen, I never did understand with Belinda how losing your voice is when someone has a different opinion. Chad never asked Belinda to be upset with production or tired of production like he was. He never asked that of her. What he did was he expressed himself. What Belinda often talks about is when your opinion is different from hers, she feels as if she's got to bend to your opinion, and therefore that's losing her voice. But no one's ever required that of her. Chad never required for Belinda to not like production. He just said it wasn't for him. And so the reason why Belinda's so uncomfortable is because maybe that's what she had to do with her ex-husband. That when he had an opinion or a desire or want, she had to bend towards it. Probably because he called all the shots. He was the moneymaker in the family. And so now here she is. She doesn't want to be that person again. I mean, Chad threw a Hail Mary. He got down on one knee. He brought some flowers. When they started asking them, what is good about your marriage? But all Belinda could come up with was, one day we danced in the apartment. I was just like, Belinda, girl, say no. Say no, Belinda. You not really wanting to be here. You don't want to be here. And the other part that I knew was a little bit troublesome was when they were talking about the troubles that they had. What Chad talked about a lot was he talked about how his rage, I don't know if people want to call it rage, but I'm going to say that, as I said when it was happening, I thought that Chad did not have full control over his emotions, because you can express your discomfort, your disagreement, but the way that he spoke to the producers was rude. It was short. Like I've always said, it's never about just your emotions. It's about how you express your emotions. And Chad's expressions of his emotions was the part that I didn't like. His emotions of being frustrated, I didn't have a problem with that. But what Chad said was he knew that that incident hurt her. But when they were asking these two, what have you learned in this whole marriage process? Chad said that he needs to learn a better way, a healthier way to burn off steam and stress. That this sort of bursting out, getting angry wasn't healthy and it triggered Belinda. And I agree. He needs to learn how to do that a whole lot better. But where I didn't see was I didn't see any part of Belinda saying what she should be doing differently. That's always a red flag for me. When I see a problem between two people and one person can clearly articulate where their problem is, forget about can you fix it. You first got to know what your problem is. And Chad said, my problem is that even in this situation, he said he was proud of himself that he was even able to control his temper to the degree he did. That right there told me he was saying, hey, you saw the way I went off on those producers. You think it was bad. But according to my history, that's even an improvement. And I was proud of myself even for lasting this long. That's what Chad said. I was proud of myself for even lasting this long. So even though you think you saw a bad part of me, in a lot of ways, it was an improvement of me. Okay. And that I think is what's causing Belinda to give pause. So in that part with Chad, at least he recognized it. Now the question is going to be, can he fix it? Can he make it better? But the part about Belinda where I have less hope for is she actually does not even see the part of her that she's bringing to a relationship that disrupts the relationships. I need Belinda to learn that she also has red flags. I think Belinda is very good at pointing out the red flags in her ex-husband, all the things that he did wrong, which I believe could be absolutely true. And I believe the things Belinda could see in Chad could be true. The problem is Belinda doesn't see it in herself. And let me tell you, Belinda is scary. And if Belinda thinks she's going to find a person where she can always be afraid and in her cocoon, like she said earlier this season, and that person's going to always have to pull her out of her little closet, her safe closet, that's going to be exhausting for a person. It's going to be exhausting. Belinda's going to have to learn how to step out there on her own and how to, protect herself, but also not require her partner to always keep her entirely safe with no risk. Belinda is way too fragile, and her game plan to find that person, she's going to need to work on that. She is absolutely going to need to work on that. Now, I wasn't so surprised about Merrick and Derek's decision because I already knew they were going to give this marriage a chance, which they should. They should say yes. Lady in red, Megan looked beautiful with her lady in red. Derek kept talking about there's a lot on the line in terms of the baby coming. And here's another thing where I like this part about Megan and Derek. Derek very well is able to sum up the problems in the household because Derek is, I think, a person who can analyze a situation and see what's going on. He's proven to be that person. He's proven to be the person that can take a complex problem and break it down into simple problem statements and problem solve. He has been the person to bring calm in the house when it gets emotionally charged through Megan's personality. And what he was able to say is their tough spots have been because they fought over their roles and duties in the house. We didn't actually get to see that. So Derek told me a little bit there that I didn't even know that they were fighting over roles and duties in the house. But what he said was he had to learn to present problems more tactfully. Like I said, I think Derek is a problem identifier and wants to be a problem solver. But what he said was he has to learn to present these things more tactfully to Megan because Megan is easily triggered to become defensive. And Megan admitted that she needs to not be so defensive and she needs to learn how to be a lot softer. I liked this for this couple. I liked that these two people could come to the table, admit their problems, what they needed to work on, and then commit to also solving the problems. You see, Megan said, I think he's going to make me a better person because I think Derek is able to put a mirror in front of her. And Derek talked about how he was excited to raise his child together. And Megan said he couldn't see himself without ever about being with him, right? We know the problems that these two had earlier on, and we saw that they really came together later on when it was announced that the baby was coming. And I'm going to go back to what I said about Derek. A lot of you got mad at me because I called Derek a vagabond. I'll give you guys this point. When I called Derek a vagabond, it wasn't necessarily based on finances. And I know that's part of the definition of a vagabond. But what I was really honing in on Derek is a serial entrepreneur, okay? He starts and stops businesses. He moves around country to country. He doesn't have roots. So the point I was trying to make about Derek is Derek moves on very easily, very easily. If a business doesn't work and fails, it's easy for him to close that business, start another one. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's not a person who's committing to a company and being at that company for 5 or 10 years. He's not. He doesn't even commit to a place to live. He hasn't committed to a woman. And so what I said about Derek is he has this part of him that I still believe that if it's not enough in it for him, he won't do it. It's almost like an ROI, or return on investment, is what business people do to analyze a business. If there isn't enough equity in this business, even if there isn't enough upside potential in this business, I don't have a problem walking away and closing the business. Like I said, I know the outcome. I just don't know the details. And when I heard the outcome, I wasn't that shocked about Derek because I've told you guys that's that vagabond nature of Derek. I don't know the details. I'm going to watch the next episode. I'm going to talk about it. But I believe it played a role. And I know everyone wanted to believe that Derek was being run over by Megan, but I kept saying over and over again, Derek wants what he wants. Derek is used to getting his way. And if there's not enough skin in the game, if there's not enough there, Derek does not have a problem picking up and moving on. I said it from the very, very beginning that in this situation about who would end up being more committed, I said it was Megan. Megan is more of a roots person. Derek is not. Megan might have been crazy in her emotions, but later on we started to see Megan folded a lot with Derek. She really did. She really, really did. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but she was willing to bend in order to keep him there. So I'll have to see. I'll have to see in the next episode. But like I said, I need to see the details. And then the other shocking decision was Pat and Rhonda. What a Hail Mary. What a Hail Mary. You know, when Pat showed up, he said he was conflicted. He had a deep love for Rhonda. I said, yes, Pat, yes. It's going to be a no. Thank you, Pat. And Pat kept talking about his love for Rhonda. I kept saying, Pat, how can you love Rhonda? And I said, oh, I get it, Pat. Because for you, Pat, love is having to constantly earn someone's love to please them. That's what you equate with love because that's how you grew up. And so you equate being in love with Rhonda because Rhonda makes you feel like your parents did, where you have to constantly earn her love to try to please her. Love hurts for you, Pat. Love hurts for you. So that's why you're calling this love with Rhonda. Rhonda is familiar to you. And what was really surprising with Rhonda is that Rhonda spent this whole entire season complaining. But all of a sudden we get here and Rhonda talks about how this marriage has been everything she hoped for. What the heck, Rhonda? How can that be? All you did was complain about who Pat is. How the heck can he be something you've always hoped for? And how you're telling us you feel so at peace and you complained. You know why? Because Rhonda wants a yes. Rhonda is a narcissist through and through. And so now what she's about to do is she's about to go from complaining about him, because when she complained about him, she wanted him to keep working harder to please her. Now they're on decision day. So Rhonda knows if she comes into this meeting complaining about him once again, Pat is going to say, see, yeah, it's a no. So now what Rhonda decides to do is, let me flip the entire script and go straight to telling this man how wonderful he is so I can manipulate him once again to get out of him what I want. But all of a sudden, Rhonda sits there, and as she's talking, she notices the body language of Pat and says, but I can tell looking at him, he with his hands folded, his legs crossed, that he's not going to decide to take my hand and go forward. So here we go, Rhonda. Rhonda came in a game plan. She said, I'm going to pepper Pat with a whole lot of nice words, and then I'm going to get him to say yes to me, right? I'm going to get what I want out of him. But when I started to read his body language, Rhonda flipped and immediately went to criticizing Pat. And she attacked him and said, look at your arms folded. Look at your hands, putting him on the defense. You're not going to say yes to me. Wow, Rhonda, that was quick. That you went from being soft and tender to all of a sudden complaining him. And then when Pat finally got to speak about saying, yeah, I am going to say no to you, he started to explain how this is a history in his life, how he gets swept along in his first marriage, that there were red flags, that people don't consider his thoughts because he's a people pleaser and people run over people pleasers a lot of time. And he says, I don't feel like I can be my authentic self. And what did Rhonda say? Rhonda said, well, you over here telling me you can't be your authentic self. Well, how am I supposed to accept you if you can't be your authentic self? So basically, Rhonda said, how can I accept you if you are not being your authentic self? So what Rhonda is saying, Pat, you've got to go first. I don't need to change anything, Pat. The problem I can't accept you is because you can't be your authentic self. And Rhonda, you just proved the point. Because when Pat tries to speak his emotions, what you do is you take what he says and you tell him it's wrong. He just said, I can't be my authentic self. And what Rhonda said was, that's your fault. The reason you can't be your authentic self is your fault because you didn't do it, so I couldn't accept you. That's Rhonda for you. That's Rhonda for you. She turns everything around to be your fault. She doesn't take any responsibility for anything. And what Pat really should have said is, it's not just about being his authentic self and being accepted. It's also a part of what he talked about later, which is about being appreciated. He doesn't feel appreciated by Rhonda because what Rhonda concentrates on is not what you do, is what you don't do. And so when she got here at this table, she started to now focus on all the great things about Pat. And then what happened? Pat started to melt. The minute Rhonda started peppering him with things that she liked about him, and he started to feel appreciated and affirmed, he went from wanting to walk out of this marriage to all of a sudden saying, okay, I'll change my mind. I'll give it a go. Bad move. Because she manipulated you. She gave you what you wanted in that moment just for you to say yes. It's not really who she is. A lot of these couples are not being truthful with each other. You see, just like Josh, in a lot of ways, is not really telling Jalen the parts about her he doesn't like. And so therefore, Jalen feels Josh is lying to her. It's what's going on with Rhonda and Pat. Rhonda's lying to Pat because now all of a sudden, Pat's the best thing since sliced bread. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. Pat, you shouldn't have said yes. You were bullied, you were tricked, you were coerced, you were manipulated, and it's not going to last. I already knew it. It is not going to last. And lastly, we get to the last person who changed their mind at the altar, which was Will. Brittany said, that she didn't even want to show up for this sort of sit down with the experts, but she says she wants to fight for the marriage. And Brittany is another person that pulled the old switcheroo on her mate on decision day. Brittany went from basically saying Will doesn't make her feel safe, Will doesn't make her feel loved, Will doesn't make her feel the kind of way she wants to feel, which is okay if those are her true feelings, because I think those are her true feelings. But then she got here and she talked about all the ways Will really makes her feel, how wonderful he is, how great he is. And all of a sudden, Will is like, well, this ain't what I've been hearing all season. I've been hearing the opposite. Where is this coming from? He's saying my problem is that my feelings are not validated in here. Anything I do has never been enough for you, even if I don't do enough. Because we know Will could have done a lot more. But what he's saying is, even if I could have done more, even what I have done, you're not satisfied with it. But here comes Brittany fighting for the marriage, deciding she's going to say all the nice things, just like Rhonda did, right? Just to get Will to say yes. And Brittany's telling him, you're amazing. You bring me joy. I'm so excited to see you. All of these things. And Will is like, what? This is completely different from how I've been feeling. The Hail Mary. Because Brittany wants what she wants. Okay? And when she was telling Will that all those nice things, and he told her that she was kind and generous and thoughtful, and that, he never knew she thought these things before, and he started crying, Will felt validated and heard in that moment. And it was everything he'd always wanted to hear, that he was enough. He was enough. And hearing that, he did exactly what Pat did. He said, now that I feel good, I'm going to change my decision. But here's the problem. Brittany is not a new woman, and neither is Will. Brittany still needs the constant reassurance. And Will, in a lot of ways, lacks the capacity to give Brittany the full reassurance she needs. Because one thing about Will we learned, when he first came on our screen, he talked about, he was using all those flowery words. His friends were saying, where do you get this vocabulary from? And Will said, my mom was very verbose. We all pick up things from our parents. And what I think Will picked up from his mother is that what he calls verbose vocabulary. And Will is a lot into words, not necessarily emotions, not necessarily feelings. And when his mother was with Brittany, you could see that. Will is loving Brittany the way his mother loved him. And a part of Will's also feeling as if other people have to sort of jump through hoops for him to meet them. I think that comes from his own relationship with his mother. Will is going to need to do more work in that area, because what you actually saw from Will in this episode was that Will actually longs for acceptance. As much as he, kept this distance with Brittany or didn't come close to Brittany, Will longs for it. You could see it deep down in Will. He longs for it. And there is this fear between both of these people where Will, I think, does want more of that tenderness and acceptance, because I bet his mother, part of me thinks his mother was the type of mother that gave harsh criticism, but then followed it up with, but I love you. You see, where that mother was more like tough love. She delivered tough words to Will, but then said, but I love you, because that's how Will sort of loves. He loves to deliver tough words to Brittany, truth, matter of factness. But on that back end, I do believe that Will has this love for Brittany, but Brittany can't have that kind of love. She can't have that tough love, but then it's because I love you. Brittany leaves that mushy, gushy, wear your heart on your sleeve kind of love every single day. And I wonder, can these two ever find the middle? Because the truth of the matter is, if they're going to find a person, Will cannot stay the person he is. And actually, Brittany can't stay the way she is either. Both of them need to develop better techniques on how they behave in relationships. Even when Brittany threw the Hail Mary, Will had to get up, create distance, walk around, gather himself, right? In sort of an introverted manner, which is fine. But it still was a separation for Brittany. In that moment, I'm quite sure Brittany felt alone. When Will got up from that couch, walked around, I'm pretty sure left Brittany feeling very left, very alone, very vulnerable. And even though he came back and he said yes, it's that separation that he created that probably would make a person go to that, especially when you're a Brittany, it would make you feel like this. It's almost the truth, but you know I love you. It's the pulling away, but then coming back to you. And Will has learned that from someplace, and I think he's learned it from his mother. And so what Will concentrates on is he doesn't concentrate on how he makes the person feel in that moment where he's creating distance between you. He concentrates on, but yeah, I come back. I love you. Just like he did with Brittany's parents in the very beginning. He created separation with the parents. He told the parents, no, I don't like dominoes. No, I don't like spades. No, 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 no. But later on, he somehow found a way to sort of blend with Brittany's family. That's Will, but that's sort of creating space and coming back, Will. That push and pull is going to be difficult for any woman, and it's especially difficult for a woman like Brittany. Both of them need to learn to round out these parts of them in their relationship. So in the end, it was a Martin episode. Damn, Gina. Of course, fine. I will marry you. It didn't leave me feeling good. All of these yeses, comma, buts, all of these Hail Marys did not make me feel good at the end of this episode. But I'm going to watch the next episode and I'm going to come back with my thoughts on that. So I'll see y'all soon. Okay, bye.